Hi everyone and welcome to LFG. I'm Ian Horne and today I'm joined by Shahmad and Tibebe Demissie, co-founders of Hagbad, who I met this year at Finovate Europe in London. So let's dive straight in. I don't do long intros as I warned you. The two of you have founded Hagbad and I feel like we should go into that. What is that? What do you do and why do you do it?
So Hagbad, the name originally means in the Somali language to take turns. And essentially, it's a way of communities to save together and to build trust and financial resilience. So the way it would work, imagine the three of us pulled in together £1,000, we would have £3,000 in total. Then 1 month, I would take my turn receiving the £3,000 payout. The next month, Ian would take his turn, and then the month after, Tibebe. So it's a faster way to access savings without interest.
Got you. Okay, I particularly like the part where I take the money out, but that's but no, that's really interesting. Thank you. It's really cool what you guys are doing. As I say, I got talking to you at Finovate at Shahmad and was really inspired by the work you're doing to create something where you've seen a gap in the market. There's a moment where this clicked for you, and I'm really fascinated by this. You covered it in our newsletter on the Fintech Scout piece, but you were standing outside Simon Squibb's door pitching a restaurant idea when the idea clicked. I'd love it if you could take us back to that moment and what happened there.
Okay, so essentially, I wanted to open up a restaurant at first, but it wasn't your typical restaurant. I was very creative. So essentially, it would be a rotating restaurant where every month the cuisine would change. You would get to wear all of the traditional clothing, have the music, have the whole experience like you're literally transported to a different country, but in central London. However, I didn't have any capital. I didn't have any business experience at the time as well. I didn't know where to start. And then I'm scrolling through TikTok and Instagram, as you do. I was a university student at the time, and I saw Simon Squibb, and he was quite new at the time. He was starting off with the whole doorbell that he placed in Twickenham. So I decided to travel there and pitch that idea to him at the doorbell. I did get posted on his Instagram.
Cool.
So
yeah.
My digital footprint is always going to be stuck on there. But I love the fact that I have this clip that I can look back on and sort of see, okay, this is one thing that I originally wanted to do. However, it made me realize that maybe there's a lot of other young adults that are aspiring entrepreneurs or highly ambitious, want to learn new skills, want to invest in themselves, however, don't have the funds or capital ready to start. I don't know if you know, but starting a restaurant, especially in central London, is quite expensive, like more than your average retailer on the high street and renting a shop from there. And it was just very overwhelming. I also thought of joining a group myself. However, like I said, it made me realize there's probably more people like me. And the opportunity, the further research that I'd done online, I realized there's not really a space for people to support each other, especially if you come from an Islamic background. We can't necessarily take out loans or credit cards that have interest on them. So there's not a lot of viable solutions out there on the market, as well as the fact that current people that actually take part in group savings often face problems, like their bank accounts being shut down due to unexpected large transfers, or just having difficulties managing groups. And it's usually done via WhatsApp, via cash or bank transfers, like I said. So we wanted to sort of create a platform where not only you can digitize group savings and remove those problems people face, but we want to actually get them to the level where they can also financially educate themselves, and then also invest in each other or in the right products that are suitable for them.
Got you. And this is interesting because based on what you said, I'm assuming there are millions of people that would benefit from this who don't currently have access to the funding required. I mean, do you have any data on that? I think we know that the opportunity is big, but have you been able to look at how big this market could be?
Yeah, so globally, I think that globally, it's quite a large number. I don't want to say the wrong number. However, in terms of ROSCAs in the UK, it's quite a hidden market, right? So we had to collate a lot of research, look at diaspora groups, look at ethnicities, but we're estimating 2 million within the UK, and then globally, this is like $1 billion market.
Wow.
That's
Okay. Yeah.
because one of the things is that it's also like, because initially for me, I'm from Ethiopia and I'd known it as one name, Ekub. And then when I met Shahmad and then she told me about it in Somalia, they name it something else. And then it's actually like so many different countries that have it. So all over Asia, in the Caribbeans, all over Africa, and even within Africa, for example, Egypt has a really big company that
Oh,
does
yeah.
this.
We forgot to mention. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
so
company called Money Fellows in Egypt, and they essentially have digitalized Orosco as well. And in Egypt alone, they have 8.5 million users.
yeah, so it's a huge market for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on ROSCAs, which are rotating savings and credit associations, right? I mean, these things, as you say, they've existed for a long time over many, many cultures. And unfortunately, they don't seem to map into the kind of Western banking ecosystem and have kind of been ignored and overlooked. So how do you kind of reflect upon that? What does it tell us about who gets to define what legitimate finance looks like?
Yeah. I think in the West, one of the things that we were discussing with some of the bankers at Finovate was how there's how do we translate that like trust-based aspect of ROSCAs? ROSCAs are essentially you have to trust within your family and then within your friendships and that's what lets it operate. Whereas in the Western world, it's very like independent, like one person for themselves, and like all of these risks and whatnot are assessed against each other, makes everything like so much more harder to regulatory approve. Whereas when you look at African countries and whatnot, our societies themselves are really tightly coupled, really trust based. So it kind of shows you there's concepts that like we need to understand maybe from the other countries and like take from that, definitely integrate into the West and try to bring them into the West.
Yeah. I mean, is there a degree of knowing that no one's going to build this, so you have to build it yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of banks like they want another person to pilot it for them, and we're kind of like positioned there where it's like we can show you that it is going to work. We know I know coming here as an international student, I would have not have thought like it would be a thing here, but then my roommates were on it, a few other friends were on it, and I know Shamad is also her family around. They're also like still doing it, even though they've been here for a longer time. So it's like there's a lot of diaspora communities, not just within Africa, everywhere that are still doing it.
Amazing stuff. And the two of you obviously founding the business together. As you mentioned in the written piece, you met at Muay Thai, which is quite cool. And then various other conversations happened since then, and then you decided to build something together. What is it that made you realize that the two of you would work well as a partnership? What is it about each other that made you think, okay, I could run a business with this person?
I
I think
think we should take turns in answering. So essentially, when we first met and spoke further, I realized that he was a computer science student at the time. And then I had my eyes locked in on him from then because I was sort of searching for someone that would be a part of the founding team, would be dedicated, also ambitious. And I think the more I got to learn about his personality, there were times I was thinking, wow, like you're really, really dedicated, because we would speak and then he would just be like, oh yeah, I've just been coding for 10 hours just in his room, blinds closed. And then he's like, yeah, that was just this one problem that I just had to solve, but it was really bothering me. So I didn't want to stop
Nice.
working on it. And just talking further about his future goals and both of our ambitions made me realize that he would be a great fit to join Hagbad.
Got you. And these traits didn't spill over into the Muay Thai, did they?
no, they do. I'm actually the president of the society
Oh
now,
wow. Okay. That's so cool.
so
That is so cool.
it's been really fun. But same for me from my side. I think I was trying out like as a computer like I was building like personal projects and whatnot, but I kind of left it as just a personal project. I never let it go further. But then seeing how Shamad was taking her idea, like pitching it to people, getting that like she had that business sense to her in terms of like getting it out there, talking to customers, talking to people, trying to get funding for all of that, and I thought it was like a part where I'm lacking. I know the technical side, but I really appreciate that like business knowledge and like sense as well.
Yeah, this is quite a classic thing, isn't it? Where you have a technical founder and a non-technical founder, and everyone kind of covers each other's weaknesses and strengths play against each other, which is pretty cool. I always wonder, I mean, because being technical isn't relatable to me, Tibebe, I'm afraid. I'm definitely more the let's say some words and talk to people kind of person. So my question is to Shahmad, which is, how does it feel knowing that Tibebe is building this stuff? Do you feel like you need to understand the technical stuff that's going on behind the product, or are you able to just kind of trust and then get on with the things that you do best?
So essentially, I feel like I personally like to be involved in every aspect, including the technical aspect. I fully trust Tibebe, but then I'm so invested. I want to see what's going on. And sometimes he uses all these jargon to explain things to me. And I'm just like, hey, can you just break it down for me? I just like a full picture of what's going on, where we're at. So I would say I'm quite heavily invested in the tech side and I'm learning a couple of things as well. But I also do have that trust in Tibebe to carry the vision of the product that I'm building. We're building.
I was just freaked out already.
I'm leaving that in.
That's how you can see I'm invested in the tech side.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. But I think that's really good to try and like understand what's going on and have a kind of working understanding of it, as tricky as it must be. So, I mean, and let's look at the product itself again, right? So the communities that you serve have often had their bank accounts shut down for making large transfers and basically penalized for doing things that are legitimate. How do you talk to potential users? Because I imagine some people possibly don't want to be brought back into the financial system after experiences like that. How do you forge that trust in what you're building?
I think the application itself is made to like support currently how they traditionally do it. So we're not trying to force them to get back into banking. They can still use manual methods of like managing their own ROSCAs. So they don't exactly have to go back. But then once we build that trust where, you know what, we're helping you manage your ROSCAs, we're helping you manage your groups, everything is ledgered, everything is, you can see who's coming in, who's coming out, payments. And then they can build that trust back again to use us, but potentially connect a bank account to the app, and then use the more like automated ways of managing their funds.
Yeah.
So just step by step, meeting them where they are, and then kind of helping them see the digital, like the benefits of the digital side of
Yeah.
things.
And just to add on to that, not only do we have like the manual feature for them to still continue using cash, but then also we're very integrated into a lot of different communities where we can directly speak with users, not just online, but actually in person, and figure out what exactly have they experienced, what their pain points are. And sometimes I have beta users voice noting me on WhatsApp, telling me stories about their previous experiences. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I guess I didn't expect it, but they feel really comfortable speaking with me because I feel like I can represent them.
Yeah, that you've raised so many interesting things there. So with that kind of feedback, what are the most interesting comments that have been raised with you?
So, one of the things that I've been told recently was that someone's mother actually encouraged them to join a group savings. However, his problem is that he was just giving his mum money. He didn't know who was in the group. He didn't know when he was going to receive his payout. He was just cut off the loop. And it's typically women in these communities that manage the funds and distribute it as well. It's not typically the men. Yeah. So hence why some mothers feel the need to get their children roped into ROSCAs. They're like, here, save for this, save for that, give me £300 every month. But then for him, it was just like that lack of transparency and essentially just confusion.
Got you. So, I mean, I don't want to knock informal schemes, but I'm guessing a lack of transparency could be quite a common feature. Would that be fair to say?
I would say so, yes, in cases like that. But in other cases where people are using WhatsApp slightly less, however, still so, because it could be that two members are not comfortable with each other, but they're added to the same group, and things are just like hidden, essentially.
Yeah. And I think your method for gathering feedback is interesting. Like, I think WhatsApp voice notes are quite a It's not as novel as it used to be, right? That is actually not as unusual a method as we might have once thought. But I do think it's interesting because that information and feedback you get from customers is invaluable, right? So how else are you gathering it? Or is it primarily the WhatsApp notes?
So we also have a dedicated UX researcher who takes time to sit on calls and meetings with users scheduled in for 45 minutes, just talking through the application, talking about their previous experiences. So that's when we get like a more detailed breakdown. And she specialized in like psychology. They're really like, they have quite a lot of expertise. Like when she took me through a session, and she was just like, did you know if like a button is placed here? Just things that were really interesting that I wouldn't have realized that would define the user experience, basically, and just the psychology behind everything.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how often a good idea falls down on UX and therefore doesn't achieve the success it could potentially warrant. I totally get that. That comes up quite a lot. And another thing that I think comes up when we talk to founders is the fact that you need to be almost obsessed with the challenges faced by your typical user. And I think you've touched upon this already, but for the typical person that is going to use Hagbad, what is the thing that they're most frustrated with or perhaps lacking provision of?
I think that if they don't have Hagbad, one of the problems that they're facing is probably the disorganization of ROSCAs. It's just WhatsApp messages that right now there's nothing like cleaner and a nicer way to organize things. You're joining people that maybe you're not comfortable with, so we want to make it very central. You know exactly who's paying in, who's paying out. In a normal WhatsApp group chat, you can't see the banks, like the money being transferred. You don't know if the other guy is sending the money, but you're not. So here we make everything transparent. We make the communication much easier to do. And then also just that in the future, bringing these contributions to valid like credit activity so that they can actually build their own credit. They're not just doing some informal thing that just gets wasted away, but actually now they have a valid financial identity to work on.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
if you think about it, people are paying on time every month, the same amount every month. So we believe there should be a reward in that that is not currently recognized in the UK. And we aim to create that. Another issue that I think we would be solving, not I think, I know would be solving for users, is their bank accounts being shut down or reported for fraud or anything like that. We want to provide enough security and data for users to actually have the whole process automated with them without having any fear of anything happening to their bank accounts.
and one other thing you mentioned earlier, which you kind of dropped in, was the use of cash. Are we talking physical cash? Because that isn't something that often overlaps with fintech products. So could you talk me through the decision there and how you handle that? Because it could, from the outside in, that could look like, even if it's a necessity, it could look like an inefficiency and a tricky thing to add into what you're doing.
It's more so like, how do ROSCAs currently operate? We know, for example, like a neighborhood is just, for example, some of the children are just being told, "Hey, go take this money and go to the neighbor right there, knock on the door, give it to the lady." You know,
Had to do
that's
that.
Shahmad has had to do that. That's how it's currently working. And if we're trying to meet users where they are right now, we don't need to change how they're doing it. We're just giving them a better way of like organizing it, better way of tracking who's paid, who's not paid, whenever they're getting these payments. That is the trust on the group owners and letting them manage it, and then later on we can onboard them into more like automated and other flows.
And also, I would say I do believe that older generations are more inclined to use the cash method. So it would be a great way to get them into that application without fully onboarding them and having everything facilitated for them so they could still have that transparency and that group management being solved for them. Whereas the first generation or young adults that are within their families that are familiar with this concept are probably going to be more receptive to using the full application.
Yeah. Okay, great stuff. Thank you. And let's look at the model itself, because it's interest free for religious reasons, I see, right? And it's also ethical first. So these two are non-negotiables, right? Those two boxes need to be ticked. How does that constrain your business model at all? I mean, I guess it does in some ways, but how do you work around that in a way that a typical fintech wouldn't have to?
So it does restrict us in the sense that once we gather, like if we are holding users' funds, we can't take interest on that or give them interest on it. So they're essentially if they do take any amount of credit risk, we can't reward them that credit risk that they're taking. So, but the thing is that that's not a bug, that's a feature in this sense. Whereas banks would say, okay, this customer is taking credit risk, they need to be rewarded for it, but they can't because their religion simply doesn't allow for it. So it does restrict us in that way. But the ways that we do monetize is through like helping out with the transaction, access to the platform, and then also those financial identity, turning those payments into financial identity. That's going to be under like a kind of like a subscription also to gain access to that.
So you've got 500 beta users for the product now within the first month, which is really cool. And is there any feedback you've gotten from doing that that's made you rethink the product or change what you're building?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we didn't account for. I think when you build products, there's always going to be like small things that you miss. For example, just like with the signups, for example, users wanted to, okay, we can currently sign in with an account, but actually, can you just make it available to also just use Google to sign in? So some small, simple things that I should have thought of or would have thought of, but then them kind of giving us that feedback also helps. And then people asking for like messaging features within the app itself instead of like using WhatsApp and whatnot. They would really want, per group messaging channels and a better like improving some of the UI. They found some of the numbers to be a bit too repetitive. Like they're seeing, oh, they're contributing £200 per month, and then again on the lower screen, okay, maybe just get rid of some of the stuff. How to make the UI like serve them as well. So it's just working through. We're still working through quite a big backlog that we got.
Yeah, well, again, 500 users is quite impressive. Is that as many as you were able to onboard in the first wave, or is that the kind of level of interest that you've had?
I think it's level of interest are also on board because obviously our infrastructure needs to like be able to like slowly scale because we're still like seeing how everything is working. We've built the app to scale, but then also want to see like where like there's gonna be like things that pop up when you see that many people, like some inefficiencies that we might have built that we need to change and whatnot. But I think it's better to like slowly onboard into it.
And also, let's look at the regulation side of things as well, because there's two of you, co-founding the business. The team is 4, right, in total. So how have you been able to manage regulatory challenges? Because it's quite a lot to take on, as well as building a business, right? And is there anything about that, any kind of hard lessons you've learned about that on the way?
Yeah. So I think when I was first starting off, I was very highly optimistic and I didn't realize how many regulations there were and what we would need to do. I thought I could just get the app made in a month and then just launch it straight away, right? However, I think from receiving support from Unlimited, they're a social enterprise that also give grants to social enterprises and mentoring and workshops. And I believe through them and their support, I was able to learn a lot more as well. And also during our journey, I've also had a lot of different mentors and one that's just stuck through the whole thing and advisors and just being able to access the right lawyers too. And I think a lot of the times I've also had to take a lot of initiative to do a lot of research and explore the information that's already out there. I think the FCA and their website, they post quite a lot, and banks also post quite a lot of on their websites relevant information and policies and documents, which you could also read through and sort of help you create a really secure and regulated application.
Yeah, and you touched upon mentoring. One thing I was fascinated about when I first spoke to you guys is you're both young, right? You're both in your 20s, I'm assuming. I've never asked, but I'm going to assume. I assume I'm right there.
We're actually 30.
Are you actually 30? Yeah. You actually, I don't know if you are or not. No, of course not. I'm going to say, yeah, you've got a good moisturizing regime if you're 30. But anyway, you guys are in your 20s. And you're obviously taking on a big challenge, and you're just jumping into the world of fintech. And again, I do think that's massively impressive. But yeah, what sort of advice do you take on? Because it's not easy to do these things alone.
I think for me, it's a lot more on. I think my kind of mentoring is more technically guided in terms of like thinking about architecture, thinking about scaling, thinking about how are people going to use the product, and then also just not thinking as an engineer, thinking about like and think of it from my customer's perspective. But then also sometimes having to do the business talks because, for example, I demoed at Finovate, and that was like a very big like public speaking kind of thing for me. Not had that much of experience with it, so a lot of the mentoring sessions I've had is about like how to present from technical to then like meet the customers.
Good, all good. And yeah, same question to you, Shahmad, because it's obviously you're doing a lot of the public speaking. I imagine you're doing a lot of the figurehead kind of work. So how do you navigate that, and where do you kind of draw inspiration from?
I would say I just strike conversations and just have those real and raw conversations with people. And I'm really straightforward. And when I do would like something, I just ask because there's no harm in asking.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's a good position to take for sure. Let's look to the future now, because your 5-year vision includes £1 billion in community savings and over 1 million users across the UK, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. That's an enormous level of ambition, right? So is the addressable market big enough for that? And also, how confident are you that you can achieve that?
I'm quite confident that we can achieve that because, as we've seen in other markets, in Egypt, they currently have 8.5 million users. And I think that there's a lot of untapped potential across the world. And starting with the UK, I'm just delving into what there is to offer to current diaspora communities and then taking it to countries where they actively take part in this, but they don't have the right applications or softwares available for this. And I can imagine that they also don't have the right payment providers and services to actually provide them with ROSCAs in general. So I think there's a very big untapped market across the world.
So you mentioned that your main goal is essentially to make a big difference to people's lives and to bring value, rather than talking about major valuations and a big sell-off or anything like that, which I think is cool. So could you guys just talk me just a bit more through what drives you and what your North Star is as co-founders?
So essentially, when I say I would like to hear people talk about it, that's how we would know that we've made it, is because some brands and some companies that exist within the UK, across the world, everyone already knows about them, right? You don't have to have a million ads out. It's all organic, word of mouth. And for people to be their own case studies on the impact that this has had on them financially, from being maybe in a low social economical state to then being more financially responsible by learning the right financial literacy tailored to them, and then being able to invest in themselves, all the right products to grow their wealth so they reach their financial goals. And I would say essentially what I want to hear people saying is that I just opened up a restaurant because I joined a Hagbad and I joined it with like-minded individuals, and they came together in a supportive community. So I would say we're definitely a mission-driven social enterprise. We want to see those figures. We want to see how we could make that impact, and we definitely want to document it and release it to everyone as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be really nice to like. There's not with all of the competing, well, not competing, but like with all the like space in terms and like rosters with all the different names from different countries and whatnot. There's not one that like everybody agrees on. So like being the one that unites them all. I think that would be
Yeah, that
really
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And then once you've done that, you finally open that restaurant.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, look, hey, it's been so much fun talking to you, the two of you. Actually, I will want to leave with one more bit of input from you, because I do think what you're building is genuinely quite inspirational. You've taken a challenge, you've encountered something, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to build a solution. And I think takes a lot of gumption, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of dedication. So to any other people that are sitting on a big idea right now, or anyone who maybe just thinks they're not ready to like tackle a challenge like that, what would your advice be, having dived headfirst into the challenge?
I would say don't set any limits on yourself. Be as ambitious as you want to be, because only you are holding your own self back. To be as delusional as you can, because you can create your own opportunity. You just need to try hard enough. If you could write luck into an equation, right? And you think, oh, wow, this person's lucky. They've achieved this, that. But then you also have to see behind that person could be a million no's and one yes. So to times your chances of luck and achieving what you want to achieve, I would say be as resilient as possible. Don't give up. Don't limit yourself and never talk down on yourself. And you'll be able to achieve anything you set your mind to. And also read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
So I want your thoughts on that as well. But firstly, telling an English man to not talk down on himself is very difficult, because that's in my DNA. So I will try to fight it, but it's great advice. Thank you. Tibebe, your turn.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of similar. There's been ideas that I've had that I've always wanted to do. There's things that I've wanted to build, which had to like sit down in the background. But then looking at other people like with the same ideas, execute them, and then see the success that they got from it. It kind of made me think, okay, actually, it's never that the problem was too complicated. It's never that it was never that I didn't have time or anything. It's just that I didn't execute. I didn't start it. It's just building in public, just starting it, just making sure like you take that first step. If it's like you're building it but in the closed doors, you still never really building it. I feel like it's better to just like let people know about it, talk to people about it. Finovate was like huge for me in terms of like talking to people about Hagbad was like cemented a lot of it into me in terms of like seeing the interest from all these banks, and it kind of builds that excitement into you to then like keep going. So yeah, build in public, speak to people about it, share the idea, and like start as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Look, it's been really fun chatting with the two of you. Good luck with everything. You've got to come back on the podcast once you've got your million users. I want to pick up on this again, but I think it's really awesome what you're doing, as I've said a few times now. But yeah, wishing you every success. Thanks for joining the podcast. I've enjoyed chatting with you. And also, just to end, anyone listening in at home or wherever you are listening, thank you for joining us. I'll be back again next week.
Raising funds, speaking the club, drinking coffee, and fighting the fraud. LFG, turn it up and come with me. Big move, natural synergy, say it loud. LFG, hold up and listening. Press play, chase the mystery, ride that way from web 2 to web